stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And may I have roll call, please?
Mr. Fitzer? Mr. Harrow?
Here.
Mr. Colbert?
Here.
Mr. Kucera?
Here.
Mr. Nushai? Ms. Redmond?
Here.
Mr. Scott?
Here.
And Mr. Solomon?
Here.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 4 is approval of this agenda. Anyone want to add or subtract anything from it? Seeing none, I will approve the agenda as it stands, and we will move on to agenda item number 5, which will be the approval of the regular meeting minutes from June 27th, 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from June 27, 2023.
Second.
Any motion, support, anybody, any changes? Everybody's happy with it? Roll call, please.
Mr. Colbert?
Here. Oh, I was not.
You're
here.
voting.
Oh, for what? Oh,
The approval of
yes.
Yeah. Mr. Kucera?
Yes.
Ms. Redmond?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Solomon?
Yes.
Mr. Harrow?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item number 6 is public discussion, items not on the agenda. I see no one from the public here, and I never know if they're on screen or not.
Looks like it's just me up there.
Okay, so seeing no one interested, I will then close public discussion. And we'll move on to agenda item number 7, which is the master plan survey discussion.
Hi, everyone. So I provided a Word document that had some wording for all the questions, and I'm going to throw on the screen in a second some of the actual formatting so that you can see how these questions look. The overall formatting of the survey is not quite done yet. The page flow still needs to come together so that we're getting the questions, like people were able to open it by category and answer the questions they want to answer after they get through the initial set of questions. But all the questions are up here and they're all formatted, so let's put them up on the screen. We can kind of go through them. And where is that? There it is. So we are on our survey page here. So we start out with, this should say background information. It wasn't updated before I got here. So we've got our set of opening questions. What's your relationship to Clawson? Pick the option that best describes your home. How many people live in your household? Do you have children under 18 in your household? What is your age range? How many years have you lived in Clawson? In 3 words, what makes Clawson a desirable community to live in? In 3 words, what are Clawson's biggest challenges? We have our how likely are you to speak positively about Clawson to others, and how did you hear about this survey? That will, once we have pushed out the survey or figured out exactly the platforms on which we're going to push out the survey, we'll probably add some multiple choices there with an other option. We've got, and then we get into our questions by subject. Asking about the on-street parking overnight. The parking questions are a bit broken up right now. There's one with a map too that it's got to move up next to that one. So, or that question has to move down to here. So we've got a map-based question outside of the downtown. Where in Clawson do you have trouble finding parking? It allows people to put a place on the map that says, here's where I'm having the most trouble. again, there's a couple questions from kind of each category that are kind of separate from the other ones. So I've got people working on getting them in the right order, but nevertheless, here they are, and here's how they look. So under biking and walking, we have which of the following do you think would do the most to improve walking and bicycling in the city? And we've got a set of items. Other has to be added to that. And then from the following list, select the statements that apply to you, and this could be more than one, certainly. We're letting people tell us I walk, run, or ride a bicycle for recreation and exercise. I sometimes walk or ride a bike to run errands. I feel safe biking on the street. I always drive to run errands. I would like to be able to walk or bike to run errands, but do not feel safe. I would like to be able to walk or bike to run errands, but the distance is too far. So we're trying to get a sense of what people's obstacles might be and what their existing preferences are there.
What about, like, well, I guess the sidewalks are identified in other parts, but like, what if, like, I would, but there's not a sidewalk leading to that?
Right. So that, we're going to have an other option there as well, but also we're letting people place markers on the map to tell us where they're seeing issues. So we've got another map here, and when you click Add Marker, it either lets you drop something on there or enter an address. So like if you know roughly where it is, you could enter an address. But if you just want to zip around in the map and put a marker on there and say, hey, there's no sidewalk here, or the sidewalk is really in bad shape here, they can do that. And they've got categories, so safety, destinations, and bike parking, and others. And when they select a category, that changes the icon that shows up on the map. So when we get the final map, we have a map of Clawson that's got these icons by category, and we can look very quickly to see where people pointed out safety concerns, because it's all the same icon. Or where they pointed out, just something else, there's like an other category as well. So if they just want to point out, and they might not even put something about biking and walking in there, they might say like, this tree is going to fall and kill someone. And that would be under the other category, and we would see those comments too. So they might be able to put something valuable in there that we didn't even think to ask them. But then there's another icon that will show up for destinations. Like, here's where I would like to be able to walk and bike to, but I don't really feel like I can right now.
Is that going to be exclusive to Clawson or like places in Clawson?
You could click a little outside the borders too, if you wanted to. Like if there was a place in Troy or something that you wished that you had better connectivity to, you could select that too.
Okay.
Yeah, it does not necessarily have to be within the boundaries of Clawson. And a lot of people taking the survey probably don't know exactly where the boundaries of Clawson are. They might be thinking about like like total soccer or something, and thinking they don't really know how far outside Clawson it is. I think Clawsonians probably know their boundaries of their city a little better than a lot of people in Southeast Michigan know the boundaries of their municipality, just because it is so small. But nevertheless, a lot of people aren't quite sure where that line is drawn. So they might have other destinations in mind. We also have this question down here where there's some explanatory text leading in. And I want to pare that down a bit. But we're asking people kind of like what facilities they might feel safer with or they think could be feasibly implemented in Clawson. And we are giving them an other, but we're letting them prioritize them, and all you do to prioritize them is drag them over and then arrange them. Just striping a lane with some vertical posts. Somebody might have an idea for something else or something they saw somewhere else, or they might say, don't do any of this in their other response. And then if you get them jumbled up and you want to put them back, they can just reset. But it's kind of a neat kind of question. It works really well with with the online version of the survey. And then when we do an in-person version of it, we can just simply have a 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of thing where people just rank them.
Are you looking for feedback right now on questions? or
Yeah,
layout or
whatever,
anything?
yeah, anything
Okay.
you want. Well, and we'll give you the link to this too.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you do have any feedback,
I guess immediately I'd be curious how this would be like mobile optimized, right? For anybody that wants to use
right, yeah.
their phone for it.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the tools that we give people to get to these is a QR code. And it does work on a mobile phone. I think it works better on a PC personally.
Sure, yeah.
I just think, well, I mean, that portrays my age a little bit, I think, because I grew up with bigger screens and I'm a lot more comfortable doing things on bigger screens. I have like 3 screens at the office to do stuff on, to spread things out on. But yeah, you can use it on a phone. For the sustainability one, we took the framework goals and we allowed people to tell us, what they thought was most important. So kind of going through each one, some of them were slightly reworded just to fit better in the survey. But just giving people a scale on which they can tell us the relative importance of each of these goals that we came up with as part of the sustainability framework.
Joe, I'm sorry, did you say, was this linked into our thing? Into our email, our packet, this part? Or no?
The link for this page was not. We have a link to kind of the more generic starting page.
But these questions are in your packet.
Yeah, the questions were all in the packet, yeah.
Questions
all
are
of
from the
them.
packet, okay.
Yeah, all the questions were in the packet, the wording of them.
Only thing I saw missing, perhaps, we talk about the reduced likelihood of flooding due to extreme precipitation events. And I was sort of curious if we would talk maybe about, reduce the possibility of a water main break, losing clean water, water quality. Clawson doesn't have a water treatment plant, obviously. So for the most part, our mission as a city is just delivery. But every time there's a water main break, there's a boil advisory as a result. So it's becoming more and more frequently a problem. So I thought maybe a question or a goal to integrate in there would be the reduce the probability of boil advisories due to water main failures, or something to that effect.
We've never had to do a boil water in my time here, during a water break.
Yeah, it's usually run your water until the
Yeah.
sand gets out of it, until it clears up, but not a boil problem. The water just gets murky from working.
Yeah,
around.
to me, I mean, whether it's boiled water or not, you can't use your water.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't want to say I don't care, but it's not that big of a consolation that we don't. The reason that we don't have to do a boil advisory sometimes, and we have had to do it in the past, maybe not while you were here, Nick, but the reason is when the pressure is so low, and we aren't able to keep pressure on the lines, and there's a possibility of ingress, dirt and water from the underground getting into the lines, and we're lucky we have a very good DPW that goes in and takes care of that, but sometimes it requires, pretty clever work, and I'm not always sure we're going to be able to depend on that, particularly if the water mains break in the middle of the winter. So anyway, it was an omission. I thought we'd talk about it, and if it's okay to include as a goal, put it in there, and if not,
I might put something, if I was going to add something about that, it might go under this, water, sewer, and streets, just so that it's a little more
Sure.
targeted.
Exactly, yeah, I noticed that under that category in the packet, we say water, sewer, streets, but when I see water, then there's no bullet point underneath there about water. I was saying we should add something there.
Okay, yeah, I could add a question about water service interruptions.
So perhaps, so for sustainability, you're more gearing towards like green space and minimizing, or I guess maximizing green space, just from permeability perspective?
Well, it deals with that, but it also deals with certain social sustainability and financial sustainability items as well.
Yeah, sure, right, obviously, yeah, the other questions, but.
Yeah, because flooding rose to the top when we were prioritizing the goals in the framework. So we listed them in the same order that they're in the framework, so that people
Sure.
can kind of tell us what matters to them. And then I guess just going to the water, sewer, and streets area here. So one thing we have here, this might be a little more general, but we did give people a budgeting exercise. We gave them kind of 1,000 points to spread around to tell us what their priorities are. Just from a spending standpoint, just with a little intro talking about how we have to prioritize spending as a city. Not everything can be funded at once. So if you had 1,000 points to spread out among these projects, how would you do it? And if you spread your points around, like I just gave 424 points to improved park and recreation facilities, and it tells me how much I've got left up at the top, 576 in this case. And let's say, okay, a little bit about that, and I want to see, a couple community art projects, but not a ton of them. Definitely want to see some stormwater management, but I'm out of points now. Maybe I have to back off a little bit on this in order to get a little bit of this. It gives people a chance to kind of play with a budget in a somewhat abstract way, but then it's like telling me, oh, you've exceeded your points. Like, you can't afford to do all the things that you're trying to do. And it kind of rams home how limited the resources of the municipality are, and that we do have to really think about what do we need, what do we want, how do we balance those two things, and how do we prioritize these things. We have a couple housing economics questions here too. Just asking people, what do you typically leave Clawson for, and what would you like to see more of in Clawson? Might not necessarily be the same things. And then just talking about how there's significant demand in the modern housing market for attached housing, such as apartments. Where do you think it'd be most appropriate? And then giving some of our major areas as sort of a way of people saying, all right, here, maybe not here.
So that question I wasn't completely comfortable with, because I think there's two questions there that should be asked. I mean, we can provide information that says there's a demand, and then ask, would you agree with increasing the amount of attached housing? And then, if you answered yes to that, where would you put it? But the way it is now, we're saying there's going to be more. Where do you want it? It feels what it feels like to me.
Yeah, you're talking about the frame of the question?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, who says there's a significant demand? The developers, or like?
Pretty much every real estate metric.
Well, I mean, I think people want more housing, that's not necessarily more, and I'm not saying residents, I'm saying people are looking for homes to purchase, not necessarily more apartments, but homes for sure. So I don't know why that
It seems like a
means-
leading question, or it's.
Very much so, yes.
Yeah.
Well, and it's stating that there's a significant demand. So,
Yeah, I agree.
And you're asking their opinion where they want to see this go in, and we're already locked into where they can go in and cannot go in.
well, unless they're looking to expand zoning for those things,
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my assumption for this question, and even for the ones above it, I would try to get more into this location, and specifically align it to the zoning that we have today, right? To determine, are we meeting those needs, are we under, utilizing, or do we have too much, availability here? So, because same thing with certain businesses, and we talked about this for the southern part of the downtown area for dental or, medical. So we've talked about this before. My biggest thing is I want to make sure that these questions and the answers we're looking for are going to help answer those questions that come to us on a regular basis around zoning, so.
Or even, not to go sideways on this, but like the size and scope of new build homes. We hear a lot of feedback about certain styles and certain encroachments on property lines and how far people build. We do have opportunity coming for a lot of new build homes, and eventually as the housing turns itself and you see certain homes needing to be rebuilt, it would be good. When we talked originally about housing, I thought we were going to talk about those kinds of things. Like, do you think Clawson needs more 4+ bed homes, or 2,000 square foot or 4,000 square foot home, those kinds of questions.
I think you would gauge that, but with a question, something along the lines of, if you were to move in the next X years, what would you be looking for?
We talked about that last time,
Yeah.
yeah. But I didn't see it in here.
I thought I had.
I think it's important, I mean.
Maybe
just-
I didn't put it in the document, but I do have wording for a question like that.
I think the thing we're dancing around is do you want more apartments, question mark, or do you want more single-family homes? I know what the developers want. The developers want more apartments, badly, highly profitable, fantastic for the developers who don't live here. I don't need to ask them that question.
Yeah.
I am curious about the residents, and do they want efficiency apartments without a bedroom? If they do. So.
Right, size of apartments even, right? Like a 900 square foot apartment, or like one that might be able to accommodate a family, or, yeah, those kinds of.
I think there might be some value there, but in general,
I would replace the existing question with that kind of like, what would you be looking for type question.
yeah,
I
what
think.
type of housing do you think should be promoted in Clawson?
Because aside from the potential new sites that we have, we are a little landlocked in terms of
Right.
new homes. But I think it's worth considering, a lot of, I guess we already have an ordinance on style of homes, right? But some people might eventually try to outbuild their lot, right? Which,
Well, I was wondering if you were getting at the Bigfoot house question.
ish.
Because, I mean, we live close to Birmingham, and we know the issues they've had with Bigfoot houses.
Or Berkeley has those hallway homes, right?
Sure,
Have you
yeah.
seen those where
Yeah.
it's whoa.
Yeah, it goes way, way, way back.
Yeah, but maybe there'd be more happening in Clawson if we were able to accommodate. I don't know what our current accommodations would even allow for on a typical lot. Do we know, how many square feet a home? I know it's a totally random question. I don't expect you to have
all
the
we have
answer.
to do is the math on the maximum lot coverage and our average lot size.
Yeah.
We know what the footprint could be, and then if you stick a second story on it, what the total square footage would be.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you maxed it out, yeah, we could tell you what that would be.
So yeah, I think under housing and economics, I would replace that third question with less leading and just, and not even really seeking a location. Because I think if you're in Clawson, you know where the apartments are, you know where the footprints are. There's not many of them. It's landlocked, like you say. I think the most valuable thing in that third question section is just, what type of housing do you seek?
Wouldn't it be, and correct me if I'm wrong, wouldn't it be beneficial for this body to know and confirm location, for zoning purposes? That's where I'm trying to get, what are we trying to ask the respondent that we can utilize based on
I'm
what
with you.
decisions we make? So I'm just trying to make sure it's still valuable if we take out the component of location, because that's what I'm trying to think of, single versus
So that's
multi-family.
fine.
I just don't know.
I'm not against having it in there. I just in my mind, there's just such a few limited spots.
Well, I
that
just
you can
think
go anyway.
that, we'll see it in the data. If we ask, do you want more apartments? People who don't live here or who are in an apartment maybe, they're gonna say, sure. And everyone else is gonna say no. So I don't know the value of asking the question in that sense, right? Unless, I mean, I think that's just a general, maybe that's generalizing a little bit, but I feel like we're pretty much, if you cut this question by the first background question around your living situation, everyone's gonna align with where they currently live, and they're gonna say yes or no based on that. So I don't know if it's valuable, that's all.
Yeah, there's only a handful of spots you can put apartments.
Right. I mean, as we mentioned, we're maxed out.
So, the edge of downtown.
I think there's a
downtown,
couple
14
types of
mile west.
questions that could be asked that speak to what people are looking for in terms of size and then
On North Main.
living arrangement.
But you can put it, like a lot of city center is multi-use type. Even though we don't have a lot of living there, there's opportunity there anyway in city center, but
Sure, like a Burger King lot situation you're talking about?
yeah, or
Right.
even like how
Somewhere
Ace
downtown.
used to just, now they've got like condos up above.
Right.
Like a lot of places in city center are one story. There's a lot of opportunity down there to
Yeah.
really go up a little. You know, I think they can go 3, right, Joe? And so there's a lot of opportunity down there.
Yeah, I think you could ask a question about size and then a question about style, and together they would tell you a lot about what people are actually looking for. So one would be kind of like, how many bedrooms are you looking for, that kind of thing. And then the other would be more of a, are you looking for a house, an apartment, a downtown loft kind of thing? What kind
Yeah.
of thing would you be thinking about moving to if you moved? And just to kind of let people tell us what it would be, and you could correlate their answers to like whether they've got kids in their house or that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, and even the parking study, right? Especially, we've had some discussion most recently with developers and parking, or, need for cutting back on parking for further development. It'd be interesting to kind of correlate those. So I don't have an issue with like an all apartment question or all multifamily question. But I think that there's, I guess, I agree, Josh, it's important to kind of get a gauge, like, are we zoning this correctly for what the residents like? But also it'd be important to gauge, like, maybe those efficiency ones aren't always sought out and people just feel like they have to take it because it's left. What kind of apartments would you see great here, and does it correlate with, like, maybe reducing certain parking restrictions in certain areas, right? Or, we can do that, Joe, right? Like, if it's city center, we can have a different requirement for parking and multifamily there versus like something that's more, towards B1
Sure.
where there's already parking issues, or B2 or whatever.
Yeah, you could.
So it might be something that's worth like further discussing, right? Do you feel like those would give us kind of a picture there?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, let me think about that for a sec.
Yeah, I'm just trying to balance too, like the complexity for the
Yeah.
normal
Right,
resident
yeah,
versus,
right,
because I'm looking
right.
at the zoning map and now it starts to make a lot more sense where you could see single family only versus multifamily options. And, how do you say, do you agree with this or not? To the normal person, I'm not sure if this is too complex to look at this map. But for me, I'd love to get a focus group and ask people about it. It just becomes
Yeah.
difficult in this kind of questionnaire.
Yeah, I
kind
mean,
of
we're
format.
a little boxed just by what's already here, too. I think if you had a clean slate, you might change the pattern a little bit, but that's not ever going to be the case. We're never going to have a clean slate. We're always going to have houses that are already there, and the older apartment complexes that are already there, and it's kind of what do you do with them to keep the neighborhoods fresh and livable. All right, well, okay, we can definitely work on the questions in that. Okay, hang on. Got the, all right,
Also, just on the, like, home questions that you have, even in the upfront background questions, thinking about like the end person that's gonna respond to the survey, I think it says detached homes. I don't know if that single family makes more sense. I'm not sure if, you know, like, as a realtor, if you have an opinion or something like, you know, if you guys have perspective of like, do people know what detached means versus single family versus multifamily? I don't know if we are using the best language or not. I know it's a little nitpicky, but I was just looking at that.
okay.
Well, I think it does add further clarity when, I mean, it's pretty basic. To me, it seems self-explanatory, but I might just have that already, you know, in my brain, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Single family seems like it also would be very commonly understood, right? But I didn't know if Joe's trying to, we do have a few duplexes mixed in with
Right, yeah.
our R1s even, right? So
Right.
he might be trying to specify and get a clear understanding of those, right? If you drive down, what is it, School, there's like
a good point.
a few little attached little homes, right? So I don't know. I feel like it's understood either way.
Okay, yeah. I have a bunch of comments that I could either go through or email to you on each section. So I'm not sure the best use of the time for
You
the
could probably email
entire
it to
group.
us,
Okay.
especially if it's like, if it's wording questions, wording comments and things like that. Yeah, you can go ahead and email them to us, it's
Okay.
fine. If there's one that speaks more to policy that you think would warrant group discussion, obviously, let's talk about it here, but, if it's more that kind of thing, just,
Yeah, a lot of
Send
it
them our way.
is around, we'll get to it, you know, on your landing page, around usability and like
Sure.
jumping around and like nav bars. And I know we talked about in that, what you were showing us, the ability to kind of jump from section to section maybe a little more easily. Because right now it's a long scroll.
Right,
Kind of get
yeah.
lost a little bit. So there's a lot around making sure we can get respondents to take the whole survey or as much as possible
right.
without overtaxing them, or like, to me, it's just such a long scroll. I would pretty much get checked out at a certain point. So like even a progress bar, an ability to quick link, kind of jump different sections like we talked about for what's most relevant for you.
Right, yeah,
some of that.
yeah, we are working on that, but any thoughts you have are certainly welcome.
Okay. Yeah, I could put something together in email too.
Just trying to see if there's anything I missed. I don't.
One, regarding the questions, I think it's in the upfront section, you know, 3 words to describe the city, I think it was, or something. I'm trying to think about if we're limiting ourselves or not. So how did you see those questions? Like what, we talked about kind of doing an open-ended for sure. So what was the kind of thought process here? This just kind of like hones in it. When you say 3 words, so I'm like, do you want, you know,
Right. Well, so like the question is, should it be 1 field or 3 fields? And I think if it's different if you make it 1 field, because people are going to start to think about a phrase.
Yeah.
And if you have 3 fields, people will think about 3 different words. So, you know, what it allows you to do is kind of see what the commonalities are. So I think 3 fields for 3 different words gives you more of a chance of finding the commonality. So like a lot of people might put the same word in or like slight variations on the same word. And then when you're analyzing it, you can say, oh wow, we saw a lot of people tell us this was one of our strengths or this was one of our challenges. So I kind of like the idea of making
Yeah.
it.
And I
3
think I agree from the
fields.
analysis perspective. I was just, do we limit ourselves to be able to get some good, you know, qualitative information from just
Well-
general open-ended without a limit? You know, not that we want to read a paragraph from somebody, but sometimes 3 words is tough to get across a main point. I don't
And
know.
then on an analysis side, though, you can do that.
Still through like
And then
text
do a
and
word cloud.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
I feel like it would have kind of accomplished the same thing without limiting somebody that picked 3 words only.
I would say there's a lot of people that I know that come to Clawson because it's a small town. That's technically 2 words. So like, I mean, I don't know if that's being too in the weeds here, but, you know, having that as like one reason, you know, I don't know if that would make, if it were 3 different fields, if like small and then town, and I don't know, you know, I don't know how that works in your world.
I think
but-
John Mellencamp would tell you small town is one word.
Oh, is it? Okay. I guess I haven't read his lyrics, but is it spelled one word in his, on his album?
Yeah, a lot of like, you know, like singer-songwriter-y type takes on small towns will spell it small town as like
Okay.
one word. So
All
I
right.
suppose you could always do that if that's what you wanted to put in there.
I mean, I like the idea of open-ended and say, instead of 3 words, say 3 items, right, or something, and let people.
Well,
let
yeah,
be-
people
let
could,
people
you
be a
could,
little bit verbose.
you
and
could
then-
put it a 2-word phrase. If we did the 3 boxes, you could put a 2-word phrase
Oh, you
in the
kinda won't
box, and
limit you to-
it would still show up as a
That's
a
fine, but
phrase.
people aren't gonna think about that. right?
Sure.
They're gonna look at that and think, oh, I have to put 1 word here, 1 word here, 1 word here.
Yeah, so it'd be 3 words or phrases.
That's perfect, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, yep, that makes sense. This is why we're talking about this, because doing this, we know what we mean. Not everybody else knows what we mean, though, so having other people ask us what we mean tells us, oh, maybe we were a little too obtuse there. All right, cool. Yeah, we can do that.
The only other thing I thought, and maybe it's just me, but there was a part where it was talking, and I know it was under streets, water, and sewer, whatever that category was, but when you say infrastructure, I think you put like public infrastructure. To me, I don't know if you're wanting to be very general there, but like to me, public infrastructure could be everything that this survey kind of is, right? So I don't. You know, like I'd rather see slower progress, you know, like it was one of those, and I should actually look for it so I can refer to it, but like.
No, I know which question you're talking about.
So like there's certain, I guess maybe it's just me because I'm detail oriented, but like I would be like, well, there's certain public things like infrastructure, like do I want sewers and, you know, streets to be fixed? Yes, but like, do I feel the need for, I don't know, you know, maybe some people might not see public infrastructure all the same way, and I would have a hard time, if you're looking for precise information from that, I would have a hard time knowing what people meant. Does that make sense to you guys?
Okay, yeah. No, I mean, I do think we're talking about roads, water, and sewers there. So maybe we just say that instead of public infrastructure, just say roads, water, and sewer.
And I think the only questions I didn't see, or for section I didn't see, was the redevelopment of the school sites. I'm not sure if that was intentionally left off. It's in our modules, you know, that we discussed. I just didn't want to.
Yeah, I think
that.
before we ask any questions about it, we need to have the school board meeting or meeting with the school representatives. I didn't want to put anything in here on that because they've done so much research on their own, and
Sure.
and I wanted to have a meeting with them first before we went out on that one.
Okay, so it's still TBD.
Yeah.
All right, just because it's listed as a module and things like that, but I agree. I don't want to ask for feedback that we can't utilize or that has already been asked before. Or
Right,
that could
yeah.
raise issues that we don't want to raise.
Exactly.
Okay.
Can we target a date for that meeting?
We in the Gantt chart, we've got a target date, and I don't remember what it is, to be honest, but it's sometime in the fall, I believe. But yes, we do have a ballpark for it, and we just gotta start talking to them and nail it down.
Anybody have a problem trying to maybe advance that from the fall to maybe midsummer, just so that we can integrate that into the survey sooner? Seems to be a kingpin.
Yeah, I hate to say it, I need the reminder of like the NAT chart and like where we are and, you know, how can we move everything along? I don't remember.
Sort of in every packet.
It might be helpful, just as a reminder, like
great.
here's the date we're on and here's what we're supposed to
Yeah,
accomplish by
right.
this date, just so we
Right.
can keep it progressing.
I thought we were planning on having this survey out before fall.
I
Yeah.
did too, so it's.
Yeah, we are. And, you know, ultimately, I'm not sure, I'm not sure it's necessarily even going to be necessary to ask questions up front about the schools. I think that might be a thing at the end where we say, here, we talk to the school district, here's their analysis of their research, and here's where we wound up. And then allow people to respond to that.
Just for information, we had the school.
Okay, school board was September. That was the
Okay.
date for that.
Kind of a busy time
Thanks,
of year
Andy.
for them, though. So maybe
Yeah,
earlier
it
would
might
better.
be. We may have to adjust that a little bit, but we'll have to talk to them to see how they feel about it.
I guess the reason I ask is, since it's our city's master plan, right? Not the school's master plan, not the DPW's master plan, but it's kind of the master plan. I think it's in position to uniquely ask the residents, where do you think the majority of funding needs to go? And if some may say it's got to go to the schools. We need better schools. Enrollment, I've heard it, you know, all of us have heard it. Some people might say the infrastructure, in particular the waters and the sewers and the roads. And some may say, you know, we need to transform Clawson to be more attractive to the tech companies. I don't know. But economic modifications, right? It's ambiguous to me. You know, I know if I ask the school district, they're going to say, no, all of the money needs to go to the schools. If I ask DPW, there's not enough money in the world to fix our roads. We'll never have enough. If you go to these individual constituents, they're all going to predictably enough say, I need all of the resources. But from the residents' perspective, we have a unique opportunity, I think, to ask them, you know, where do you think it should go? What is the most priority? Where is the most priority needed? And if we don't include the schools, I think that's a miss, personally. But to your point, Joe, I think we got to have that conversation with them and make sure they're comfortable with that question even being part of it. You know, they may not. They might like their own sandbox. I don't know.
Right, and that's kind of the sense that I've gotten from the way things have gone in the past, is that they've got their research that they've done, and they are standing by it when it comes to how they're thinking about the disposition of those properties in the future. So we could add schools to the budgeting question, though. Without
Yeah,
any,
that's good.
Yeah.
that's not a,
It's very relevant right now.
yeah, exactly. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
Well, with that said, is this the totality of the survey aside from any feedback that you're getting today?
Yeah, for now, and then obviously later on in the process, we'd be asking people other questions based on where we go. With
So
our
are we
planning
adding in
efforts.
other things, other different aspects of the, let's say Parks and Rec and
We're not
field
doing a
use?
Parks and Rec plan, so I think we can safely stay away from those questions, because they'll be, when they do the Parks and Rec plan, they will ask, they will do a survey for that separately.
Okay,
Yeah, if we were to ask them, it doesn't really speak to any particular module that we're working on here, and Parks and Rec is a separate plan, because Michigan likes to chop things up and silo them when we do planning. So I think that we would just leave the Parks and Rec questions to Parks and Rec.
okay. I thought it tied right into green spaces.
I think so
but that's
too.
just me.
I think it belongs there. I think you could go to a number of residents and they would say, you know, what, you don't care about the parks?
Or the
You know,
fields,
or the fields,
potentially.
you know,
But yeah,
or-
I mean, that's just
Yeah.
me. I don't know.
But, I
I
mean,
understand
like I
what you're
said,
saying,
it's a
Joe.
separate,
There's
it's a
a-
separate
there's
plan,
another
and we're
plan.
not speaking to it in our plan, so I'm not sure what the question really gets us for this plan.
I might have to pull up the modules again, but I'm quite sure we talked a lot about green space, and Parks and Rec have a lot to do with green space, sustainability, feeling of community culture, and we talked last time about having places to go that don't necessarily cost money, and like, I feel like we've kind of talked a lot about aspects of it. But I totally respect, Joe, I'm not trying to be
Right.
rude, that we don't want to step on other people's toes
Right.
too and try to over broaden ourselves into other departments that aren't us. I'm not trying to do that, so I totally respect that. You know, it's just unfortunate because I feel like citizens, you know, I didn't even realize that when I was asking the question, right? So some people might see that we're missing certain aspects of like, well, I really wish they would have talked about this, or it's just unfortunate because I wish there was more cohesion between our
Yeah.
city departments so that we can
Sure.
kind of,
We're just
you know.
talking about the survey here too, right? I mean,
For sure,
Ultimately,
yeah.
the survey will bear some fruit and we'll start having serious conversations about the actual content of the master plan, but.
For sure, but what if I want to spend all my money in my little analysis on better parks?
Not going to get a chance as it
Nope.
stands. And I think that's a miss.
Or I'll put it in other maybe, right?
Well, you can. I mean,
Yeah.
it's there as an option to,
Oh, is it?
improve parks and recreation facilities is
Oh.
is one of the options.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, well then, all
I'm
right,
sorry,
you got me
I
there,
missed that
Joe.
too then. Okay.
That's all I needed, I'm fully satisfied.
I guess,
Yeah, I mean, it's specific to facilities, but it still gets at the main point.
Yeah, right. It gets at the main point, exactly.
Cool.
I guess.
What's our current policy on bicycles? I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but my understanding was that the city doesn't like you riding on the sidewalk, that they would prefer you riding. I don't think these are enforced.
Yeah, there are some signs in the downtown asking people not to ride on the sidewalk in the downtown area.
That makes sense because you have a lot of foot traffic down there. I can see people running. We have it during our car show. We allow bicycles in, but we want them to stay in the center lane, stay away from the cars. We don't want to get the car scratched up. But I don't see that many bicycles riding in the street around town. Most of them are sidewalks and side streets, I think.
Yeah, it's the same way in Berkeley, especially people with younger kids ride on the sidewalk.
My kid better stay on the sidewalk. That's all I gotta say.
We're going to have a problem coming ahead when Ryle Oak brings their bicycle lane. They already have it down in Normandy, I think.
Yeah, it's already
Heading
in
this
Normandy,
way. And then what do? The bicycle lane just goes away, then do they
Right.
stay on the road? Do they get on the sidewalk?
Yeah, if there's no one parked in the parking spaces, you ride there, and then
I don't think
You
we have
might
the space to put a bicycle lane in,
have to
and I
get
don't,
over.
I don't see the ones that I see in other cities. I don't see them getting used that much.
To be fair, when I ride down to Royal Oak, which is a nice, wonderful ride, I still stay on the sidewalks and avoid the bike lanes. One reason I have small kids, right?
Yeah, you
So
feel
I don't
safer.
feel fully safe, but like, I feel like I would still be on the sidewalk. Royal Oak, though, it is illegal to ride on the
know.
sidewalk down there.
yeah.
So I don't think that that's going to be a hard transition, but that's just me personally. There might be people, I think that if, you know, my dad used to ride his bike to work, he rode in the street, and I think people would just ride in the street if they were in the street and feel comfortable with it. I don't know, maybe I'm naive, I don't know.
Yeah, it's part of it is just the auto dominance of our culture in this country. We just don't think about bikes as transportation. We think about them as recreation for the most part, and we just don't give a lot of our right-of-way space to them. And even when we do, our networks are spotty. Like there's a mile of bike lane here, and then a mile away there's a half mile of bike lane, and then over here there's a quarter mile of bike lane. And then there's a sign that says bike route going through a neighborhood, but it's not connected, and it's not done in like a really holistic way where we're really thinking about it and trying to, a lot of times it is just paint on the road, like on Coolidge Highway or something. And a lot of people just don't, paint on the road isn't enough for them. They still feel like they're being kind of menaced by a truck with a hood that's the height of my forehead. It's just, we just got a long way to go. So,
I don't
Maybe
feel
we
safe
put-
riding in a bike lane on a busy road,
sure.
I guess depending on the speed limit. Within a neighborhood, if you put a bike lane in, if there were room, then that would feel a little safer, but on a main mile road, like 14 Mile or 15 Mile, or Coolidge or Crooks, no, I wouldn't
Right.
feel safe.
I mean, that's why the countries where people ride bikes the most like their main facilities are completely separated from the road. It's like a path. And, you know, I think in southeast Michigan, there's very little will to, like, take out an entire vehicle lane to put a separated cycle track in. I just don't see that happening, really anywhere in southeast Michigan. But ultimately, if you wanted to get that kind of, you know, vigor in a cycling culture and really get a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't using cycling as transportation, that's kind of the sort of transition you have to make to really robust separated infrastructure where people, that's the mode on that infrastructure. You might have someone walking or running or something too, but, you know, mostly it's used for bikes. Yeah, it's going to be very hard to get there based on where we are.
But sometimes people push it through, and it doesn't end well. It's not an easy, as you say, to execute plan. If you're starting from scratch, sure. But, I mean, I look at the 14-mile and 75 interchange. I mean, raise your hand if you miss like hell the cloverleaf. Dear God, I miss
We've got
the
these
cloverleaf.
diverging diamonds all over the place now. There's like,
Roundabout.
Oh, I would have loved a roundabout over what we have, you know.
Oh, jeez.
And the perk of it is, there's a crosswalk. You can ride your bike on a dedicated walk under 75.
yep.
I have yet to see anybody do that.
I see people
Yeah.
do it all the time. To be fair, yeah, even on 16 and, yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's quite a change. A lot of idling cars all day long. But anyway, well, let's move on.
But yeah, so if there's anything else anybody's got percolating in their mind, let us know. If it occurs to you after the meeting, you email us. And yeah, otherwise we will make some changes like we talked about here tonight, and we'll get the formatting in shape, and we'll get ready to start pushing this out.
So Joe, do you feel, and I'm sorry if this question is very direct, it's not meant to put pressure on you, but like when we talked about potentially expanding our, you know, like B2, B3 zones and thinking about the dynamics and the intent of use and how we might kind of re-look at those, do you feel like this addresses that in a way that would give us a clear indication one way or another, or like in what way we would want to potentially expand uses?
That's a good question. You know, I mean, given how much of the survey there is right now, it might be something that waits until we get through some of the other modules. But yeah, it is something that we need to think about addressing directly, because you know, we have thought about that with those BRD districts. What are they for? What do they mean? And oh, excuse me. And I do think that we have to think about asking some questions about it. I just think that it's probably comes a little later in the process.
Okay.
Once we get through some of the other things, we really want to get through that infrastructure module and get through our work with the schools. And then we can kind of, those modules were put at the end of the schedule, so maybe we can kind of address it at the time when we get to those modules.
And did you say that there was a way to get, I know spot zoning is not okay, I'm not suggesting that, but like, I feel like there's certain parts of certain areas that might be more conducive to certain uses versus, you know, we talked about that. Some of our, you know, all of our B2 isn't all the same. You know, some lots might be able to handle certain things that some can't. Is there a way to get, or a way that we have access to, and, you know, kind of what those lots look like and what currently is there capacity-wise? Or is it something we should just, take our time maybe once in a while and drive through and make notes as we, are passing through?
Well, it's essentially what a special land use is. So, when you have a district, you set up your permitted uses and your special land uses. And your special land uses might have additional standards that apply to them, and those standards might include a certain site size. If the use is, intensive or just requires more area than other uses in the district. But that's really what the distinction between principal permitted uses and special land uses is for the most part.
But I'm sorry, I probably should know this, but do we have specific special land uses for each zone separately? Okay, we do,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
I'll
there are
just
there's
refresh.
2 lists of uses in every district, principal permitted and special land use.
Well, I know that, but okay, but special land use, I'm talking about specifics in terms of how expansive we can get in our ordinance. We'll accommodate 10 extra cars in this special land use in this zone. That's
Yeah,
it.
you can build use-specific standards like that into your zoning ordinance. We have a bunch of them in Article 4.
Okay.
And that's where you do that, is if you've got a use that you think needs something specific in terms of how you're regulating that particular use because it has some externality or something like that, then you can place a specific standard on that use. And then any time that use comes in, it's got to meet that standard. Rather than just talking about it in general terms, let me give you an example.
Okay.
From something that's in our ordinance already. Let's look. Junkyards. Probably don't want any of those. In fact, we don't have any right now, and it's a pretty unlikely thing that's ever going to come in. But we have some standards in our ordinance for it. There's 3 of them. It has a minimum lot size of 4 acres. Congratulations if you have found 4 acres in Clawson. A minimum setback of 250 feet between the front property line and the portion of the lot on which junk materials are placed and stored. So it has a much larger setback than other uses in that district, which happens to be the I-2, which is not on our map.
Right.
Can't be within 300 feet of a residentially zoned district, so in other words, not in Clawson. And then all roads, driveways, parking lots, and loading and unloading areas shall be paved or treated in a manner approved by the city building department so as to confine any windborne dust to within the boundaries of the site. So, extreme example, perhaps, but it is a use that has specific standards in our ordinance: cell towers, drive-throughs, hotels and motels, live-work units, primary caregiver facilities is a great example of a use that has a lot of standards associated with it. On-premises smoking establishments, we adopted those just a couple years ago. Gas stations, car washes, they all have specific standards in our ordinance, some of which speak to things like screening or setbacks or just sort of thinking about what that use might do to the uses around it
Right.
in terms of its external effects, and then how do we manage that with specific standards.
Interesting. Okay, so, and then within each zone, we would be able to identify if that special land use is permitted there.
Exactly, yeah.
Gotcha.
And then we link right to Article 4 if there's standards for that use.
Gotcha, okay. That's helpful, thanks.
Joe, just before you wrap up, since you sent us that kind of landing page or the home page for this whole master plan,
Yeah, which
Can I ask
also
a couple
needs work in
questions?
my opinion.
sure, yeah, and that's where I'll probably, instead of spending time today, I'll just send you some notes that I had on that, because I think there's a good way to truncate that a little more simply into, I was thinking the call to action is have your voice be heard, something like that.
Sure,
And then
yeah.
you go into master plan, how's it used, what is it? All that
Right.
information, how would your information be used, or the feedback you provide. But anyways, there was some stuff on that I was just trying to figure out, and it might change. What's the quick poll versus this whole thing where you have to create a screen name? Can you just explain, is that part of this process, or is it just a placeholder?
You can use the quick poll function however you want, basically. If you just want to ask a specific question about something else, or just give people an opportunity to buzz you with a comment about whatever's on their mind or
Okay,
something
so it
like
is
that.
separate from,
Yeah, it
the
is separate
questions
from
we
the,
reviewed.
it is
Okay.
separate from the question.
because
yeah.
sometimes I think we talked about having like an entry question that would take you to the
Right.
full survey.
Yeah.
But, okay. And then are we gonna have this whole like screen name, email address, or can people just start the survey without going through that process? I'm trying to think of anything that might deter somebody from answering the full
Right.
survey and starting it.
Did you say like registering an email address?
There's a portion on here that asks you to create like a screen name. It looks like it's required.
Oh.
And then enter your email address. And I just feel like sometimes people are like, I don't want to get spammed. They're not going to
For
do that.
sure,
And we just
yeah.
want to avoid, it might be a placeholder for this website for
Yeah,
now.
that can be actually separated and made into a, like if you want to learn more info
Sure.
about this, like it gives us a chance to give people pings to follow along
Okay.
through the process.
Yeah.
I
that
think
makes
that's
sense.
what was intended there, but,
Yeah, it feels like it's an opportunity for people to provide comments, just comments in general.
right, yeah,
I think of it as like a support site, right? You might have comments that people are able to submit based on the responses that people give to someone's question or whatever. You know what I mean? And most people aren't even interested enough to do it.
Right.
So I wouldn't want to make that required, that's for sure.
Yeah. I just want to avoid too much public discourse on a page,
Yeah.
especially if we're asking kids to join and things,
Right.
sometimes it can get off the rails unless it's
Yeah.
beneficial. I just want to be cautious of how we use that and being able to respond to people and,
right,
Especially if there's
Yeah.
not a moderator.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Productive,
Right.
that's all.
Right.
So
yeah,
that's fine. I have a couple of comments on the page that I'll just send you, Joe. after
okay,
this.
that's fine.
Were you gonna make a comment about, and you'll know this, Josh, I guess, like, is there any value in deciphering if under 18 is like an age range that's like 16, 18, or like 15 under, or anything like that? I'm sure there's not a lot of 5-year-olds gonna be doing it on an iPad, but like, is there any value there in like an older teen versus a younger teen, or not so much? We just wanna kind of, they all hold the same value in terms of their,
Yeah, I don't know all the laws too. There's a lot around under 18 and like
yeah.
how you engage online.
That's
so
true,
Just
yeah.
gotta be cautious. I'm not really sure.
For sure.
Because right now I think we just have one of your response options is under 18.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have a question around how many children under 18 are in the household,
Right,
but
Yeah.
not respondent question.
You're probably right there, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
okay, cool. Well,
I have one more quick question
Sure.
before you move on. So we, a couple of meetings ago, talked a little bit about a representative from the Planning Commission attending the DDA meetings. And I haven't heard anything more about that. I'm wondering if I should just show up or,
let me think. August will be the first opportunity for that, I believe.
I thought they had one next week.
They do have one next week, but the master plan's not being discussed at that one. It's just their
Okay.
regular old meeting. It will be August, will be
Okay.
the first opportunity.
So more information coming.
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, Joe, before you wrap, I just want to say it looks good. I appreciate some of the interactive stuff. I think that's going to be really beneficial. I know you're tweaking everything, and I'll give you more feedback as you go along, but it looked like it was easy way for people to engage. I feel like get a little more specific, especially with the drag and drop maps and prioritizing specifics on, what's most important to you, and all of that was really good, so,
Okay, good.
yeah.
Glad to hear that. Thank you. All right. Well, thanks, everyone.
Yeah, appreciate your hard work.
Thank you.
Okay, we're good. We'll move on to agenda item number 8, which is other business. Does anyone have anything under other business? Seeing none, I'll move on to the planner's report. Nothing from the planning's report. We'll move right along to agenda item number 10, staff reporting and training opportunities. Some of that we get in our packet.
Yeah, so as you guys read in my email on Thursday, the building department server was struggling to connect to the software that we use, so I wasn't able to compile anything, and I was out of the office until this morning, and didn't have time to get getting that report out to you guys. So I figured either by the end of this week or early next week, I will send you the report and then include that in the next planning commission packet. So it'll be kind of like an in-between report rather than for a specific meeting. So be on the lookout for that. Next planning commission meeting on July 25th, we've got 2 site plans coming in front of you, so that's going to be the bulk of that meeting. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any feedback from Rendez, or not Rendez?
Trowbridge,
Thank
they're,
you,
they're
Trowbridge.
coming back. That's one of the site plans.
Okay,
Yeah. Yep.
thank you.
How about the National Coney Island? We approved them for a drive-through and restaurant. Is there any transaction? The dates look like they're still the same as ever.
You're looking into the future, huh?
Yeah.
We've got a meeting with them tomorrow, so
Huh, okay.
hopefully something's in the works, but obviously still probably a little bit early in the process, so hopefully something in the next couple months.
Guess I'll do it now, although I'm not sure it covers under staff report. But we got an email from a resident, I think you were on it, Julie, I believe was her name. And she voiced her concerns about flooding in particular. And I got the idea of reading through it that there was responses to that email, but I couldn't see what they were. Am I the only one?
That might
Yeah.
be quorum. We don't want it to be quorum.
Well,
Right.
and they responded separately, just as the staff and then with the resident. And we've taken steps to communicate with her, and we're meeting with her going forward. So her complaint is being addressed.
And I think it feeds into what we're trying to do with the master plan too, right, under infrastructure. I
Yeah.
mean, that's how we can impact it, right? I mean, I would hope that it's heard on all levels. I think it was a really important email, you know, I know I read the whole thing because I think that's
Yep.
just one voice out of many that we hear very often, so. So basically, we don't have visibility into response, is what you're saying.
No, I mean, it was just our engineering department's going to take a look at that. And obviously, this has been a problem in that area for a long
Are
time.
we supposed to know this or not?
Hmm?
Are we supposed to know that or not?
That the engineering department's going to be looking into it. I mean, it's not public information, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, the planning commission doesn't always look at what that problem is. She included you guys, which is great, and you guys give a platform to talk about it, and it's good timing with the master plan. But a complaint like that is more geared toward the elected body in the grand scheme of things.
The elected but not the appointed.
To the city council, yes.
An administrative problem.
Correct.
No doubt. I guess I would have just viewed it as a courtesy if the city manager or anybody else in the city chooses to respond to an email that was clearly addressed to us, that they would have the courtesy to copy all of us on it. I don't think it's a violation of the Open Meetings Act. Certainly, if we start making decisions as a group or even a partial quorum, yes, I get that. But I don't know what was said, and I feel kind of left out. And I'm not saying I am the decision maker. I'm not saying I command someone to go to her house and survey. But it doesn't seem to be a closed point. And if there are nuances of it that can be understood by this body that make us better influencers in master planning and in site plans in the future, I think it would be good to know. We've surfed some intentions on the how do we communicate in the past, and it seems to be in just recent years specifically, it has become a very hypersensitive topic. I don't think we're a stronger body for it. And we've spent, I don't know, I'm going to say 15 months at least, talking about various things in various ways, and even just the master plan. We've talked ad nauseum almost about the survey and getting all of this feedback from people in new and exciting ways, whilst we have a resident practically crying to us about her neighborhood and her flooding problem. And I feel like those are very direct things that we could respond to and make sure are integrated in our plans. But if we're not allowed to talk about them or comment on them or communicate on them, it's probably not going to happen, so.
Well, I
I'm
have
not
to
seeking
say,
any-
not communicate, that's not the same as saying, I communicated back to her. I didn't reply all because I didn't want to make the mistake of potentially opening up a quorum by responding to all. I responded directly to her, so I was free to respond to her. But I get your point that having kind of a formal response from the city manager, that we can all kind of know what it is and be better informed for it, I think does have value. I do. I agree with that point. I
Yeah,
don't
guess
know
if there's a standard process when there's multiple bodies and folks on those emails, if it is, we lean to the city manager making sure they copy everybody and just say this has been taken care of, and if they want to provide the response, it'd be great, but just so we're not individually reaching out. 'Cause I know I didn't respond because I don't feel confident in providing a qualified, well-thought-out, robust response. I figured somebody else was well-suited to do that, but would be helpful, to Nate's point, to know that was addressed. I think we only found that out because maybe she did reply and say,
That's the only
thanks
reason
for
she,
someone.
and I think it was her message. I think she said, just so you all know, I did get a response.
So I'm not sure if we can
Well-
just confirm what the process would be in terms of like closing the loop.
Right,
maybe,
I mean,
Nick, you know?
we get complaints whether you guys are copied on the emails or not, and we're addressing them. And I mean, you guys should have the faith that any complaint that we get is being addressed. I understand the want to know if you guys are copied on it, and we'll see what we can do in the future, but it's not like you were purposely left out in any which way.
And Josh, to your point, I don't think that most residents are necessarily looking, like, I didn't have a direct solution for her,
Right.
but just feeling heard. So just responding and letting her know thank you, and that's helping me to be better informed and well aware of what's going on. I think that's giving value back to her, that she's at least being heard, because I think the worst thing ever would be to like have nobody respond, right?
Of course.
So.
And that's what I was asking, if there was, to add on to Nate's question, like a formal process. So when we are copied, to make sure there is some closed loop feedback for this body to say, someone did reach out, because I would hate for that to happen. Or just knowing,
right.
We don't know that nobody actually responded. I'm sure that wouldn't happen, but
I've always felt the need, if they're reaching out to us directly, to at least acknowledge them, but that's just my personal thing. I don't think we have anything written that says anybody is going to do that. I'm pretty sure Greg does as well. Don't you typically at least acknowledge just,
I tried to, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been disappointed in the past when we've had people that said that they sent emails to all of us on planning, and at one time, we didn't get it.
yeah,
The addresses were screwed up at some point in time. And it's disappointing when somebody spends time to write
For sure.
three-page letter and it doesn't come through, I feel for the people. We can't really affect their problem. We can't really solve their problem for them, but at least let them know that we're interested, yes.
and it's, look, we brought it up tonight. It's
Yeah.
being talked about. It's at least
Yeah.
in our awareness.
Yeah, I think that we serve the residents. We're appointed by the mayor. So in a way, if we keep a veil between the administration and the elected body, we're part of that elected body. And we're supposed to represent our neighbors in the best way we can. And if they have an issue that's not getting addressed, certainly it should go to the city. But if the city is not handling it, I think they should absolutely go to their elected representatives, whether they're the council members or if in the case of an infrastructure issue, which is clearly not a temporal event, it's not like, get the trash out of the park after the 4th of July, which, by the way, they did an amazing job getting all of that out of there so quickly.
I heard that's the Boy Scouts, actually.
Is that so?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
I don't know if that's true. Is it the
It's a
Boy
mix of
Scouts?
volunteers and
Yeah.
in the DPW,
Oh.
yeah.
Yeah.
If it's an issue that I think Julia was fairly clear, it wasn't a temporal issue. It's a 9 years in the making observation on her part that doesn't seem to be getting addressed systemically in a long-term, long-horizon point of view. I don't think it's wrong for her to send it to us, or the mayor, or the council. So I got a little bit of an issue with that. And this isn't directed at you, by the way, Nick. It's up here thing. And
But who said it was an issue, though?
Before you go any farther, I mean, there was, when the original flood happened back in 2014. There was a couple years later, and it lasted, I think, 4 or 5 years, a multi-jurisdiction lawsuit with many municipalities, the county, that ultimately led to her having the cities repay people who were affected by that, and also invest certain monies into infrastructure. And so we're doing all of that. Obviously, we've got a long way to go, but we're trying to do what we can to fix the infrastructure. So.
And I don't want you to think that anybody here had a problem with their sending it. I don't think I've heard anybody say
No,
that.
absolutely
Okay.
not, no.
Okay, good.
No. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, we have no legal update because we don't have a lawyer tonight. Before we adjourn, does anybody up here have any subjects they want to bring up, or? I mean, Mayor and council have been doing that lately, so let's offer it up if somebody has a comment to make.
No, I think the one thing I'd ask is, it sounds like the process going forward for our meetings is going to be standard business and then master plan, kind of on opposite, meetings. So that's kind of how we're going to take that going forward. You guys could just maybe resend the agenda or the long-term kind of timeline for that, just so
Yeah.
kind of reacclimate, so I'm kind of prepared.
I'll throw that into the email that I send to you guys with the report as well.
And that's selfish because I just have work travel and things, and where I can, I'm booking my own travel and working with clients on what days work. So I want to make sure I'm there for critical meetings.
Of
and
course.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think we're going to try and do that balance of actual business in the master plan. But if we've got a site plan that we're anticipating being a relatively routine one, maybe a facade improvement, we'll talk with the master plan as well. But if we've got 2-3 site plans, we'll probably not overload the agenda, so we're not here until the late
Yeah,
hours
we
of
don't
the
want to
night.
kick people out because we're working on master plan when there's more important business as well. So I agree. Thanks. But it's just so I can plan for
Of course.
going forward. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah.
I have a question too.
Sure.
Kind of building off of that. I have some travel coming up as well. What is maybe anyone can answer this. It's not really necessarily directed at you, Nick, but what is the rules around remote attendance for members of the committee?
So, if I may, I don't know if
I believe you can do it, but you can't vote remotely.
you can attend, participate in discussion, but if you don't have the ability to vote, yea or nay.
Okay, perfect. That helps, thank you.
Yeah, and then Andy did add too, you can't count towards quorum. So if there were 4 of you here in person and you were the 5th one, since you're not a voting member, you're not part of the quorum.
Okay. But I can participate from a question standpoint or in the conversation?
Yes.
Just not when it comes down to the vote, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Yeah, right? Can we hold off till
Yeah.
the
Anything else you guys want to cover?
I'm sorry, who was the second there?
Motion and
Second.
Okay,
second.
I just couldn't catch that.
Sorry.
All right. Mr. Cusero?
Yes.
Ms. Redmond? Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Solomon?
Yes.
Mr. Harrow?
Yes.
And Mr. Colbert? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.